Thank you for joining us for this edition of Prophecy in the News. I'm your host, Kevin Clarkson. We're doing another show today with Doc Marquis. Doc, it's good to welcome you back.
Thank you.
I think we've had a chance to roll out your new book, The Final Rapture, and we're going to talk about some of your many other teachings and presentations, because we can get more into this in other shows, but you have a background really in the occult and the Illuminati, and we'll hold that to hear. But we want to jump right in. I have, for one, as the host of this show, steered away from what some would call the hyper-sensational, and we have not done, at least in the time I've hosted, a lot of things about aliens and UFOs, because I think that there have been reasons to be critical of some of those emphases, and they've gone to the extremes and fringe, and they've attracted a lot of, I think, unwanted attention. But you're not in the party line on this in that sense. You really are, well, as you said, you want to tell us the biblical truth.
Yes, and that's how I will always attack these topics, because when we look at what you would call, like these fringe topics, things like that, when I first looked at a number of this stuff, I was beginning to sit back and wonder, what? Mm-hmm. And I had already known the truth about it, but it seems the truth hasn't been revealed to the people as far as we know, and that's what I wanted to do. With this 2-volume set on aliens, fallen angels, or Antichrist, we take everything from the very beginning.
And let me just grab your title for a second.
Oh, please.
You're saying it's aliens, and then you're asking the question, fallen angels or Antichrist. So that's kind of the direction.
Mm-hmm.
So go ahead.
Right.
You take from the beginning.
All these, well, let's face it. We're led to believe that this little gray race of people about 4 feet tall, let's say, no hair, big bulging black eyes, are supposed to be somehow communicating with us right now, and that, the eventual thing you would expect is some sort of visitation from them. But that's, nowadays. Now, before we got this homespun alien, if you would, let's bring it back before the 80s. We had all types of aliens. We had green ones, black ones, red ones, tall ones, short ones, skinny ones, pudgy ones.
A lot of variety.
Some with, it was a smorgasbord.
So aliens practice diversity, you're saying?
Well, I would think so, because if what the people want me to believe, just because there's something like in the neighborhood of 200 billion something galaxies, and then there's 200 billion times 200 billion planets out there. So according to the numbers, they say that there should be another civilization out there. Well, no. I mean, it looks great on the blackboard.
Sure.
But so did communism. How did that work out?
Not very well.
Exactly.
I believe, and I think it's readily apparent when you think about it, I think as our society has turned away from God, they still have a deep hunger for the supernatural. They were made that way, and they're searching it out today in all of this literature about vampires and werewolves and aliens and all of these ghosts, the television shows that actually have a little bit of, they try to make them look like scientific documentaries, the hunts for Bigfoot, the ancient aliens, all of
don't
those.
start with ancient aliens.
I know.
Oh, please.
But this is very popular in our culture.
That's the problem. You see, man inherently has a part of himself that, shall we say, has a spiritual part here that needs to be filled. And if it's empty, they will fill it. It doesn't matter with what, just so long as that spiritual part of them is filled. But the problem is they're filling it with, all this nonsense.
Right.
Things of the occult, which they should never be having anything to do with. And so one of the big attractions, obviously, as you just mentioned with ancient aliens, the numbers say there should be another civilization out there. Okay, fine, whatever. I think we are uniquely created by God for His specific purpose.
We're center stage for redemption on this little blue speck of dust
you know?
called earth.
And it reminds me of what I believe it was King David who had said, when I consider the heavens, the sun and the moon, which thou hast ordained, what is man that thou art mindful of him, and the son of man that thou visitest him? What is there about us that God
Great
takes
citation.
notice? I can't even begin to comprehend something like that.
That's a wonderful citation out of Psalms on that.
It's
He doesn't
phenomenal.
say, when I consider your heavens, where are the aliens?
Right.
And
You
that's
know,
what our
exactly.
science department is asking.
Wait till you see where they really come from.
Well, let's talk about it.
But,
Let's jump in.
So my big question at that point, with all these different type of aliens, all of a sudden in the 1980s, the mid-80s, something happened.
It homogenized
It into the little gray aliens.
with the big black eyes.
Yeah, no hair, 4 feet tall. What happened? Did all the other races of aliens suddenly decide, oh, we're going to leave the Earth and just leave it to them now? No. Something happened that you no longer had all these different types of aliens. It's as you said, just one type of alien. And the answer will stun you. People are not looking in the right direction, but you see, all these things related to the aliens, believe it or not, are directly connected to the ancient giants as first mentioned in Genesis chapter 6.
Let me read that.
Okay.
Some of our viewers will be familiar with this. This is describing the world in the time before the day, in the days of Noah and before the ark was built and God brought the devastating flood. It says in Genesis 6:4, there were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown.
Mm-hmm.
So, go ahead.
There is a direct connection from that event to the aliens. Now, it took me 3 months to write those 2 DVDs. There was so much information, I had to split it up into volume 1, volume 2. There's just so much. And it's 4 discs, 8 hours long worth of teaching. But the truth is, there is a direct connection between the giants and the aliens, and especially with, you know how they're doing a lot of the experiments now, mixing one type of animal with another and trying to come up with some people are referring to as chimeras.
Yes. They
Well-
call it genetic splicing,
Right. Now,
and it's actually being done in labs.
and, well, they have come up with quite a number of new species like the lygra. It's part lion, part tiger. Then they've come up with other combinations, and people are trying to convince me that they're going to create chimeras. And I'm saying, no, they can't do that. Scriptures tell us, I believe, I want to say it's 1 Corinthians chapter 13 or 15. I think it's 13, where it says that all flesh are different. The flesh of men is different than the flesh of birds, of fish, and it gives quite a list.
I believe that is 15 because it's speaking of the resurrection body.
And
And he's
yes,
saying
it does.
everything
It
has
speaks-
its own type of body.
And there's a difference between the terrestrial body and the
go.
celestial body.
Uh-huh.
Right. And so this tells us right now that this can't be crossed and mixed. God himself that says it is different flesh. It doesn't go together. Now, with the lygra, you can do that because it's of the same family.
Feline.
The feline. Exactly. So you can do this.
Right.
So long as it's within the same family. Medically speaking, I can see how it works. But once you try doing, some of the ancient myths said that the chimera would have the head of an eagle, the body of a lion, the wings of another bird, and some even say, the feet of another animal. No, you can't mix 4 different families
Right.
and expect it to live. So there are limits. When God established certain boundaries, they're never going to be crossed.
And Genesis 1 speaks of seed after its kind.
Yes. As it says, when these boundaries were created, one quick example is where God doesn't allow the shoreline to be breached by the ocean.
Right.
There's some sort of divine barrier that was established there, and it's never going to cross.
Right.
It's the same thing with these species. It's just not going to be able to be crossed. I don't care what they say or try to do.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, anyway, so all this, technically speaking, if we want to get into the aliens, really began in the early 30s. And that's because the Illuminati was just about to put into power one of the greatest puppets in history, and that was Adolf Hitler. Nazi scientists.
Let me say, just for the sake of our viewers, we've already mentioned your awareness and affiliation, knowing a lot about the Illuminati. We'll be doing separate programs on the Illuminati to bring you more information. Some of you are familiar with that term. Some of you may be hearing it for the first time. This is really a cadre of elitists behind the scenes who actually run international things and actually set up and topple a lot of what happens with governments, we believe. And if you don't believe in a conspiracy theory, you don't know human nature.
Yeah.
And the question behind it is, a lot of people are willing to accept it simply as a cartel of international bankers, but when we look deeper, there's a dark occult side.
Oh yeah.
So you're saying 1930s, they set up really Germany and the Third Reich as a part of their plan to destabilize Europe?
Yes, and if anyone really checks into the background, into Adolf Hitler, you will find out that Adolf Hitler and most of the top echelon within the Third Reich were occult practitioners.
They were.
They were
true.
Definitely. I mean, there's no doubt of it.
That's historic fact.
Yes, and I first started writing about that part of Hitler back in the early 80s.
Mm-hmm.
People thought I was nuts that Hitler was into the occult. People, you just don't know your history then. It's quite, you can document this. Well, anyway, so it was through the Third Reich now that the Illuminati continued with a plan. Now, this plan, they'd been working on it for 75 years. And during the Nazi regime, they started what you and I would call the UFO movement, because they started actually building flying saucers. I can show you the photos of the
you've got in these videos.
Yes,
DVDs, you've got
the
photos.
factories, the actual flying vehicles, and all this. And the interesting thing is about this is that most people don't realize that there's only 8 major types of flying saucers, and that's it. People think because we've been visited by hundreds and thousands of alien races that there's hundreds and thousands of different flying saucers. No, there isn't.
You said there's basically 8 designs.
That's it. Every single flying saucer you can come up with is going to mix or match one of the major 8. That's it.
Were those developed in Germany, or were those
yes,
afterwards?
They were there.
Because a lot of those scientists did come to the U.S. and work in our aeronautics.
That's another part of the story.
That's another piece of the story, but go ahead.
The most classic example would be what was known as the Hannibal flying saucer. You know, your classic has a, like a bulge and like this. And, it's been used in more movies than you and I can think of. Then what's known as the lenticular flying saucer, the one you saw in the TV series Lost in Space.
Okay.
That's, and there are others, the cigar-shaped one, as people call it. But these were all made, and you'll see them for yourself. The original, I've got the original photos, schematics, the plans, everything from Nazi Germany, from those factories and such as they were being created. It's all in there. But the point is, they created these flying saucers to, get the story going. You've got to show something if you're gonna sell it. And that's what people are seeing. Especially our own flyers. Air Force. At first they were calling them Foo Fighters.
Foo Fighters.
Yeah.
I think I've heard that.
Yeah, it's an old term, that was used during World War II. So once and this is where it gets really interesting, as you just said, once World War II was over, they didn't just take Werner von Braun and the others for no reason at all. They were working on a very special quiet project. And again, you have to get into the history of this so you can see just what was going on, the truth of what was going on, I should say. It involved a particular quiet, if not black project known as Operation Paperclip.
Right.
And what our scientists did was build upon what Nazi scientists had already been doing for almost 15 years at that point. And we didn't end up with the NASA space program. It really was a Nazi space program. Because that's where all the information came from. Isn't it interesting that the race to get to Berlin between Russia and America, we should have been able to beat them easily, as far as getting there, because the Russians took all the good toys, the new technology. We weren't really interested in that. We wanted the paperwork. What were the Nazi scientists really building? And that's what we really wanted, because we were working, as it says, with Operation Paperclip. We were even devising and improving upon these UFOs that were being built in Nazi Germany during World War II. Again, the photographic evidence, I've got the schematics, everything here to prove everything. And yet, it's all connected to the giants. Strange as it sounds, what is
Connect the dots here.
Yeah, what is a 4-foot alien, gray alien, having a relationship to a 40-foot tall giant?
You're going to have to tell me.
No, you're going to have to watch the DVD.
Oh, okay.
No. This is, no. You're going to have to watch this one to believe it. But there's also direct connections between, all the crop formations you see throughout the world. And this is what's interesting. I always like to say throughout the world, but the truth of the matter is, in England, on the Salisbury Plains, is the famous stone circle known as Stonehenge. Right.
Yes.
That is the most famous one, dates back to about 3000 BC. And what's interesting is, that's a small stone circle.
Right.
The one in Avesbury-Henge, not too far down the road, is over a mile in circumference. And these were temple complexes of religious worship. That's their true purpose. They also aligned, using an occult practice, astrology, to determine the setting of the summer solstice and winter solstice. But they were also used for religious rites, those being human sacrifice, through the Druids. Archaeologists have found under Stonehenge alone more than 4,000 human skeletal remains, and they were sacrificed. They could tell by the way, they were executed.
Right.
And think about how many must be buried underneath Avesbury.
That's a mile.
Yeah. And there's more there was a little bit more than 1,000 such stone circles throughout England, Ireland, and Scotland. I mean, you can still see the ancient remains. And yet, the rites of human sacrifice were being performed at every single one of these regions for a very diabolical plan that actually started in Genesis chapter 6. And this is where, at the end of There Were Giants in the Earth, this new DVD, that one of the most recent ones I just put out.
Let me just stop and mention this too, just because our time is really going rapidly. We have about 8.5 minutes.
Oh, wow.
And we're just getting started. There are 2 volumes on aliens, fallen angels, or Antichrist, and we're just kind of scratching the surface of the topic right here. And then there's a third one that is more recent research and done. It's called There Were Giants in the Earth, that really dovetails with this very nicely. And each of these, as you said, each one contains at least 2 DVDs.
Oh, yes.
And hours of presentation.
The ones with the giants, it's 2 discs, 4 hours. There was so much information on those 2, I had to split it up into 2
This is 8 hours.
It's 4 discs. I think it's, I know it's definitely over 7 hours long. It's a lot of information.
A lot of information. Anyway, these are available separately for $19.95 a piece and shipping and handling, or you can get the bundle for $54.95 and shipping and handling. And as always, you would want to go to our website, prophecyinthenews.com, or call the 800 number you see there on your screen, and we have assistants ready to help you with your order. But let's just come back to the point we're making. You've got these megalithic structures, not only in really the Isles of Britain, but really even in the Middle East, especially in places.
Oh yeah, you'll find
Lebanon,
stone
Turkey.
you'll find the stone circles in Göbekli Tepe,
Mhm.
Nivali Kore, and if the dating on those is correct, those were made somewhere around 12,000 BC, which means those structures are older than the Sumerian Empire, which we believe right now was the oldest of the old. No, I personally think it was Babylon myself. But
Nimrod's Babylon.
yes, on the plains of Shinar,
Uh-huh.
where they were trying to construct the Tower of Babylon and everything else, and
In
he had
rebellion
10
against
cities.
God and seeking the astral
Yes,
deities.
exactly. And so we are looking at these ancient megalithic stone circles that can be found not just, as we said, in England, Ireland, Scotland, Göbekli Tepe, Nivali Kore, Russia, Sweden, Portugal, France. I can keep going on. And
How about Easter Island, and how about, is that different?
that's a different story.
South America?
Well, as a matter of fact, the ancient pyramids you found there are directly related to the ones in Egypt.
Okay.
Oh yeah, all these things, as it says, I will show you every single one of these stone structures and everything there were giants in the earth. Because, as I said before, these structures, these megalithic stone structures that were built right at the same time that the giants existed, they were built by the giants. Let's just settle that right now.
Some of the largest stones in the world.
You can't.
We don't know, humanly.
Well, the
how it could
mystery
have
is,
been
yeah, the
engineered.
mystery is how did they do it? What instruments? It's called old horsepower.
Yeah.
Pick it up. If you're a giant, put it in place.
Yeah.
Especially some of those that were 40 feet tall.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, remember the Bible describes one of them as tall as the cedar of Lebanon, and such. And what's interesting, the average height of a cedar tree is 40 feet.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to double check this because whenever I see something like a comparison made here, I know God's doing it for a reason, so I check on these things carefully. And it was as tall as that, and there were, you see, whenever you see here of stories of ancient giants, you're going to find the archaeological evidence.
Right.
Wherever you see these stories, you're going to find stone circles. Wherever you find these stone circles, you're going to find crop circles. And wherever you find these crop circles in relationship to the stone circles, you're going to have demonic activity.
All right.
That's what you see at Stonehenge and other stone circles. There was a connection that dates all the way back to the giants in the past and to what's going on today.
Now, when you say fallen angels or Antichrist, you may not be able to fully answer that for us in this time, because that's really the purpose of the whole presentation.
It takes a lot of evidence to take you from point A to point B. But one thing I guarantee you, you will see the demonic activity. You see,
The connection.
in this particular DVD, there were giants in the earth. I think it's the second last section. I've been doing a lot of field work. I'm not going to say exactly where, in relationship to trying to find the remnants of the ancient giants.
Mhm.
And wherever there were stone circles, I guarantee you're going to find demonic activity. The last section here, I will show you, next to a stone circle I've been working at, 2 genuine demonic manifestations from beginning to end. And if you look close enough, you'll even see the interdimensional portal that the second demon came through.
Mm-hmm.
This is what's going on, and it's supposed to go on according to the prophecies in the scriptures. These activities, and even worse, are going to climb higher than anything we've ever
You
expected.
speak of the verses that speak of the deceivableness of Satan and lying wonders and the things that he will
Yes.
be doing. Wow.
And when we look at the prophecy in Revelation 18:23b, it tells us, it says verbatim, "For by thy sorceries were all nations
nations
deceived."
deceived.
Now, it didn't say some or part of them. It said all the nations of the world, every single one of them, are going to be deceived through the occult, and they're handed over to the Antichrist.
Mhm.
So, in order for that prophecy to be fulfilled, we have to see right now in our day and age a resurgence of the ancient occult religions greater now than all of recorded history.
Well, I believe that's happening right now.
That's exactly why it's happening, because that prophecy has to be fulfilled, and we're seeing the fulfillment beginning right now.
You know, not just with these phenomenon that people describe as UFOs, but even in our pop culture, we're seeing manifestations of occult signs and symbols, and we have some other shows we'll do about that with
Look
you.
at what those football games. What's that biggie? The Super Bowl.
Super Bowl, yeah.
You see all these.
The halftime shows.
Thank you. And all the occultism that's in it now.
Mhm.
We have, I think, more television shows involving witchcraft, vampires, werewolves than I think any other.
Ghosts.
Yeah, and
It's
than
mainstream.
any other theme. The occult literally is becoming the top dog.
Yeah. Again, it's like a lot of things. It's good and it's bad. It's bad because it's dangerous.
It's more than dangerous. It will damn your eternal
Exactly.
soul to hell.
If I could say if there is a good opening anywhere, it's just that it demonstrates man's hunger for the supernatural, and if that can be captured and turned to the Lord,
Yes.
that's the good point. And you know, as our time is sort of elapsing now, that's a good point to turn to you and say that you know, we can get fascinated with this stuff, and a lot of people do this. They seem to make careers and ministries built around these things. I think a ministry needs to be built around the gospel. It needs to honor the Lord Jesus Christ. And we can become too fascinated with the dark side, and that's to our own detriment, as you've heard Dr. Marquis say. But we are not powerless against it if we are in Christ.
Amen.
He has defeated all evil. He's vanquished Satan at the cross. And when he rose from the dead, he disarmed principalities and powers. We have authority over Satan's kingdom, the kingdom of darkness, if we are submitted and in Christ. Christ died for you. He rose again. He'll save and forgive you and share his power with you if you will surrender your life to him. Do it today, and we'll keep looking up.